Hey everyone, and welcome to skillcapped's tier list and rundown for patch 10.8. There are a ton of meta shifting changes this patch. Jungle is having its XP significantly altered, the bot lane meta is being shaken up, not to mention some massive buffs and nerfs to more than a few unsuspecting champions. Don't be scared though. As always, we'll be breaking them down along with a detailed tier list for each role by a team of challenger players, analysts, and experts from multiple regions. This is then cross-referenced with up-to-date statistics to give you the most accurate information that you won't find anywhere else. And speaking of being scared, what are your guys' thoughts on the new Fiddlesticks? Is he too strong? Too weak? Personally, the only time he fears me is when he's on my own team in Champion Select. But we'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. And while you're down there, make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon to keep up with the meta and start taking your game to the next level. Alright, let's jump straight into it with the meta shifting jungle changes, and trust me, even if you're a laner, you need to learn what they mean as this will impact you as well. All players are having their shared skill XP reduced by 20% from levels 1 to 6 and 10% from levels 7 to 8. This is massive. Right now, some of the strongest picks in the jungle are early game aggressive champions like Elise, Rek'Sai, and Lee Sin. What's important is that you understand the unique strategy these champions would use. They barely farm their camps, instead relying on ganks to get kill XP to keep up in levels and gold. Then, after they kill the laner, they can help shove out the wave, gaining more XP and gold from the minions. We've already seen another recent nerf to this type of hyper-ganking strategy, ironically enough from a change targeted at bundle strategies. In patch 10.6, they made it so that junglers gain 13 less gold and 50% less XP from lane minions if more than half of their farm is from minions instead of jungle camps up until the 14-minute mark. Of course, this was meant to weaken Master Yi funnel strategies, which never seem to go away anyway, but as a side effect, it also meant that hyper-aggressive junglers couldn't rely on soaking minions after ganks to help them keep up in gold and XP. Well, this funnel mechanic was nerfed even further this patch, with the penalty triggering if your minion kills are greater than 40% of your gold earned from monsters, down from 50%. In addition to this penalty is now removed later into the game at 20 minutes instead of 14. You should be starting to see the big picture. With direct nerfs to the amount of XP junglers will get from shared kills, along with the penalty for farming too many minions, these hyper-ganking strategies will become much weaker. That isn't all though. Riot is increasing the amount of experience all jungle camps give by 10% at level 9+. They're also increasing the amount of solo kill XP by 20% levels 1 through 6 and 10% levels 7 through 8. These are direct buffs to scaling farming junglers who can farm camps fast and efficiently, while then becoming strong enough to land solo kills on laners. It also means that when you die to a jungle gank, your laner will gain less experience than before, preventing them from snowballing quite as hard. There are also a few other minor changes. They are giving early game home guard on death at 50% movement speed, decaying over 5 seconds. This means no longer dying level 1 to a late invade, and then walking super slow to your next buff and falling massively behind as a jungler. It also means that laners that die in lane will be getting back to their tower around 2.5 seconds faster, so they won't lose out on as much gold and experience from minions. Additionally, jungle items will have their sustain increased by 50% when below 30% max HP. This is definitely aimed towards helping the jungle be more beginner friendly, helping players get through their clears. Still, there could be some unforeseen changes. For example, Olaf actually clears faster the lower in health he is due to his passive. With these new sustain changes, this could very well make his initial clear speed actually slower. Alright, so laners rejoice as you should be seeing less jungle ganks overall, and for you junglers that want to know more about how this will impact you, we got you covered in the jungle video section later on in this video. Before we move on to the tier list, I quickly want to mention that if you're not signed up to skillcapped, then you're missing out big time. We just hit over 800 guides on our website, which are the best on the internet. With challenger-tailored courses we've spent hundreds of hours perfecting, you're sure to improve. We're so confident in this that you can see what rank we think you'll hit before signing up for the long-term plan. If you don't hit that rank while actively using skillcapped, then you'll be eligible to claim a full refund, so there's literally no risk. Getting back into it, starting with the island called Top Lane, we have a nerf to the boss known as Set. His W base damage is being lowered. This is a significant nerf as Set's W is the ability he maxes first. He'll be losing 10 flat damage at level 1 and 30 at max rank. Some players think Set's overpowered, others not so much. But if we take a deep dive into his stats, we can see a much clearer picture. For regular players, he averages a 52% win rate. Okay, you're thinking that's not too bad. However, this comes with having the highest pick rate in top lane at 11%. For those of you who don't know what this means, when a champion has a high pick rate, it always artificially lowers their win rate since so many people who have less than mastered the champion are playing them. Again, this is proven if we look at Set's win rate for players that have mastered him. He sits at the top of the heap with a 60% win rate. Still, Set has been on the cusp of falling out of the OP category ever since his last round of nerfs, and we think this is finally enough to drop him down into the S tier. Urgot is receiving another buff this patch just in time for his new pajama skin. His Q damage is increased by 20 at max rank, along with his total AD ratio increased by 10%. His ultimate is also having its cooldown reduced from 120 to 100 seconds at rank 1. These are massive buffs to a champion that is currently sitting at a less than mediocre win rate of 48%. However, check out what happened to his win rate after the buff's last patch. It actually plummeted. Confused? Yeah, we were too, until we realized that those changes introduced a couple of different undocumented bugs, with his stun only lasting 1 second, him no longer turning to face the target after flinging them, etc. So yeah, the win rate is deceiving, and once these bug fixes go through, we think his latest buffs will be enough to push him from the C tier to the B tier. Moving into the tier list, we have some big changes. Mordekaiser is finally dropping out of the OP category for the first time, along with Set, and they're both being replaced by Wukong, Fiora, and Kled. This is something that we predicted in our last tier list video, and we think that it's finally come to fruition. The meta in top is currently being defined by 3 items: Blade of the Rune King, Death's Dance, and the 2 upgrades for Tiamat, Titanic Hydra and Ravenous Hydra. All 4 of these items have received significant buffs in the past several patches. What you'll find is that the 3 champions that are placed in the OP bracket are not only there due to being some of the strongest champions just by themselves, but that these items have core spots in their builds. With Fiora seeing her core build become Ravenous Hydra, Triforce, and Death's Dance, and some even going as far as to weave in a Blade of the Rune King. With Wukong, his core build is Blade of the Rune King, Black Cleaver, Death's Dance. And with Kled, we're Titanic Hydra, Black Cleaver, Death's Dance, and some experimentation with trying to incorporate Blade of the Rune King as well. So what you have is these champions that were already strong prior to the changes, now having super buffed core builds, and at the same time, the other OP champions, such as Darius and Set, have been receiving direct nerfs. The hype train is real, and you want to jump on and get some free low before the rest of the player base catches on. One other notable champion this patch is Maokai, rising into the S tier. Now, this isn't because of his raw strength or ability to carry games. No, instead, we think Maokai is one of the safest and best champions to play right now if you get autofill top. When taking a look at other champions at the top of the chart, Jax, Tryndamere, Camille, these are all scrappy bruisers that if you don't know how to trade with, you'll find yourself getting stomped. Not with Maokai though. He's tanky, has great sustain, and doesn't need that much gold to be useful in teamfights. For the low elo picks for this patch, that's gold and below, we recommend Tryndamere, Jax, and Mordekaiser. And for the bans, we recommend Wukong, Set, Darius, Mordekaiser, and Maokai. Wukong is a must ban despite nerfs. He's still overpowered, and he's played in 3 different roles. Fiora and Kled shouldn't be ban worthy just yet, as the rest of the player base hasn't caught on, and so their pick rates are relatively low. Instead, high pick rate S tier champions will give you a better rate of return. Pick Set, Darius, Mordekaiser, or Maokai based on what you have the most trouble with. Sweeping into the jungle, let's talk about the ghost in the room, Fiddlesticks. To say he had a less than strong release would be an understatement. His win rate dropped from 47% to 42% as soon as he went live. As a response, Riot immediately implemented some hotfix buffs, increasing his W's base damage. This had the effect of spiking up his win rate to, you guessed it, 47%, the exact spot he was at before the rework. So yeah, Fiddlesticks has definitely had one of the weaker initial releases, but with him being a newly reworked champion, you just know buffs will eventually be coming to him until he's on the stronger side. And to be honest, we were surprised not to find additional buffs in this patch. Although we may not be scared of him yet, after a couple patches, I'm sure we'll all be running away in fear. For now though, he'll stay in the B tier. Next, we have a big nerf to Master Yi. His ultimate's attack speed buff is being reduced from 30 to 80% to 25 to 65%. The reason why this is so significant is that nearly all of Master Yi's damage is powered by his auto attacks. Attack speed is sort of the fuel Master Yi needs to run over the enemy, and with it now being lower, he will definitely be weaker. For these reasons, we'll be dropping Master Yi from the S tier into the A tier. Popping out of the shadows, Evelyn is receiving her first buff in a while, and it's massive. Her Q damage per spike is being increased from 25 to 35 to 30 to 50. Okay, this buff is so amazing I don't even know where to start. Her Q is her main ability for doing damage to not only champions but camps as well, and it's also what she maxes first. Keep in mind, this is an ability she spams as it's on an extremely low cooldown. Even a 5 damage increase would be significant, but to do an extra 15 damage per Q cast at max rank is just insane. You then combine this with the jungle changes we went over at the start of the guide, how aggressive junglers are getting nerfed and farming junglers are getting buffed, and you really start to see how Evelyn is getting a big boost this patch. We are rising Evelyn from the darkness of the B tier and placing her at the top of the A tier. Rolling into the tier list, we have some big meta shifting changes. We have dropped Elise, Rek'Sai, and Lee Sin out of the OP tier into the S tier. We think the repeated nerfs to the hyper ganking strategies, along with buffing the XP from camps, will finally be enough to drop them out of the top picks. We have several different champions in their place, which may seem confusing to some, but each fall into their own playstyle. Echo and Wukong are the straight overpowered champions due to their kits and numbers, making them far more immune to meta shifts impacting their strength. Olaf is the last remainder of the aggressive champions, and this is due to the fact that his insanely fast clear speed makes him immune to the XP nerfs. Karthus and Graves are the strongest farming junglers on the patch. Karthus was already overpowered prior to these changes, and will now only become stronger if that's even possible. Graves has received multiple back-to-back direct buffs, along with indirect buffs to his build in the form of the Death's Dance changes. These are your 2 go-to picks for farming, scaling, and hard carry style of jungling. Zac and Nunu are the strongest of the tanks. Zac has fantastic scaling and clear speed, not to mention you can flex between going damage Zac or tank Zac based on what the situation calls for. Nunu, on the other hand, is more about putting down early game map pressure through ganks and taking objectives, so he isn't as hurt by the jungle XP changes since he typically transitions into cheap support style itemizations that helps keep him more relevant than other damage oriented early game junglers. For low elo, that's gold and below, we recommend Warwick, Kha'Zix, and Master Yi. Don't worry, even with the Master Yi nerfs, he will still be super strong in low elo brackets, and remember, the buffs to farming junglers also help him. For bans, we recommend Echo, Wukong, Olaf, and Karthus. Echo and Wukong are just too popular and strong not to ban at the moment. Banning Olaf or Karthus comes down to personal preference and whether you want to face an unstoppable early game champion or an unstoppable scaling champion. Roaming into the mid lane changes, Orianna is receiving a buff. Her W speed and slow amount is increasing from 20 to 40 to 30 to 50%, as well as her E's AP ratio being increased by 10%. These aren't the most significant buffs, but we wouldn't exactly call them weak either. Orianna has been sitting at a subpar win rate of 48%. These are the kind of buffs that will increase it to 49, maybe 50% if the meta also shifts in her favor. Ultimately, these buffs are a bit too utility focused when most would agree what Orianna really needs to become powerful is a bit more damage. For these reasons, we'll be leaving her in the A tier. Ryze is also receiving a buff with his Q movement speed when consuming 2 runes, increased from 20 to 40 to 28 to 44%. He's also seeing some minor base stat buffs with his health being increased by 5 and his attack damage by 1. The movement speed buffs are actually pretty significant as the movement speed from it has always been a core part of his kit that has made him overpowered in the past. That being said, we don't think there'll be enough to take him above the A tier, but we will be moving him higher up in the A tier itself to reflect his new strength. Jumping into the tier list, there are some important changes to take note of. We've lowered Vladimir into the S tier and replaced him with Katarina in the OP tier. We covered this in our last tier list, but Katarina's stats are showing all the signals that she's overpowered. 53% win rate, 60% win rate on players that have mastered her, and an 8% pick rate. She's a fantastic solo queue champion that can snowball hard and carry games. There were also a ton of significant nerfs and buffs to mid lane champions last patch, and there are some surprising updates to them. Despite Talon receiving heavy damage nerfs last patch, they barely impacted his win rate at all, which probably speaks more to how strong he actually was before the nerfs than the nerfs themselves. He'll be going back into the S tier. Galio also received some buffs last patch, and they were way more successful than anticipated. His win rate shot up more than 3%, putting him at 51%. This is why he's now been placed in the A tier. Another champion to keep your eye out for is Aurelion Sol, who has soared into the S tier. Way back in patch 10.4, he received a damage reduction on his W ability. This saw his win rate immediately dip down to 51% from 55%. However, since then, every patch his win rate has been going up, and now he finds himself with an extremely high win rate again at 54%. No one really knows or talks about Aurelion Sol just because of how unpopular he is. He's only picked in 0.85% of all games. And so, his true strength is kind of flying under the radar. For low elo picks, that's for gold and below, we recommend Kassadin, Fizz, and Annie. However, there's a fourth we decided to add. Nocturne. Nocturne is a push into roam style of mid laner, and we think he's the most low elo friendly compared to his comrades. For bans, we recommend Kassadin, Diana, and Echo. All three are some of the strongest champions on the patch while sporting the highest pick rates as well. Kiting into the AD carry changes, and boy do we have a lot of ground to cover. There are some truly meta shifting changes in the bot lane. Let's start with Aphelios, who is receiving a nerf. His stat level up, which gave 3 to 18% bonus armor penetration, will now give 2 to 12 lethality instead. He's definitely going to be losing a lot of late game damage from this change. Alongside this, his Q ability is having its scaling on its damage nerfed from levels 1 to 9 to levels 1 to 13. This means that at level 1 and level 13, his Q active will do the same amount of damage as before, but between these levels, it will be doing less. For these reasons, we'll be dropping Aphelios from the S tier into the A tier. Next, we have nerfs to Senna. Her passive spawn rates on minions Senna doesn't kill is being lowered from 25 to 22%. You have to keep in mind that AD carry Senna will be killing minions, which gives her a 1.67% chance of spawning a Mistwraith. This nerf only impacts AD carry Senna for minions and monsters she doesn't kill, either by someone taking her CS or her missing them herself. Still, that happens a lot throughout the game, and we think this is finally enough to take her out of the OP category and place her in the S tier. Beerus is getting a nerf which may come as a surprise to some of you who haven't been keeping up with the pro scene, where he's a hotly contested pick. His R cooldown is being increased by 20 seconds at level 1. Overall, this kind of nerf shouldn't impact the average Beerus player too much, and as such, we'll be leaving him in the A tier for now. Kalista is also seeing better days, with her base armor being lowered from 23 to 21, and her E-slow from 25 to 45% to 10 to 42%. These nerfs are honestly massive. Firstly, hitting an AD carry's base armor is always a problem as they're now taking more damage from everyone. Second, the slow on her kit was half the reason she was so strong, both in bot lane as well as in top lane, where she's been seeing more prominence. Having it go from 25 to 10% significantly lowers her strength in the early levels. For these reasons, we'll be dropping Kalista from the A tier into the B tier. Alright, enough of the nerfs, let's move on to the buffs. Ashe is having her Q attack speed increased from 20 to 40 to 20 to 60%. An extra 20% attack speed on mid to late game Ashe is pretty big. Also, consider the fact that Ashe is already in a great spot with a 52% win rate. With these buffs, we're comfortable rising her from the A tier into the S tier. Tristana will also be receiving a buff with her E bonus AD ratio being increased from 50 to 130 to 50 to 150%. Remember, her E does damage to both champions and towers and is typically the ability she maxes first. An overall damage buff to trades, all-ins, and towers is exactly what's needed to rise her up from the C tier into the B tier. Lastly, we have Xayah, whose E damage falloff per feather hit is being lowered from 10 to 5%. Here's an example so you can see just how much damage Xayah will be gaining. Let's say she lands 5 feathers, and each of them do 100 damage each. Before this buff, she would have done 400 damage. After this buff, she would have done 450. And that damage estimate is on the lower end. The more feathers and raw attack damage she has, the more significant this buff becomes. This is why we'll be rising Xayah from B tier into the A tier. Tumbling into the tier list, we can see the AD carry meta has really shaken up, with Misfortune standing alone at the top of the rubble in the OP bracket. You have to keep in mind, whenever so many of the strong meta champions in a role get nerfed, it means other champions that haven't even received buffs can suddenly become strong in comparison. Some picks you may want to be on the lookout for are Vayne, Twitch, and Jhin. All three have seen their win rates continue to increase as other stronger champions have been nerfed. For low elo, that's gold and below, we recommend Misfortune, Caitlyn, and Ashe. Misfortune is too powerful not to play right now, while Caitlyn and Ashe can be safe with their long-range auto attacks. For bans, we recommend Misfortune, Senna, Caitlyn, and Ezreal. The reason we added Ezreal is that he's a very safe pick that can be annoying to play against. He currently has the highest pick rate of all ADCs, being found in 27% of all ranked games, so he can definitely be worth a ban if you don't like facing him. And engaging into the support changes, we have a buff to Soraka. Her base mana is being increased by 50, and Q mana cost is being reduced from 60 to 80 to 45 to 65. Although this only impacts her mana, these are huge buffs. Plenty of Soraka mains can attest to the fact that you run into mana issues with Soraka. These changes help with that problem tremendously. Soraka currently sits at a very mediocre win rate of 50%. In the end, we think these buffs are enough to place her into the A tier. With that being the only support changes on the patch, surprising, I know, let's take a look at the tier list. What a surprise! Nautilus, Leona, and Blitzcrank are still in the OP category. The support meta really hasn't changed for a while now. Maybe they were waiting to implement the AD carry changes first before they started messing around with supports, we're not sure. Currently, the tanky engaged supports reign supreme, as they are tanky frontline initiators, which wouldn't be that bad, but they do so much damage for being a tank support. More often than not, you check the death recap to find the enemy Leona did more damage to you than the actual AD carry. Besides this tank engaged playstyle, there are two other main support playstyles that are meta. You have the roaming style of support, where Bard currently reigns king, leaving the ADC in lane so that he can start snowballing the rest of the map. And then you have the protect the AD style of support, where Nami, Janna, and Yuumi all function within similar power levels. Oh yeah, and there's Thresh, who doesn't really fall into any category, or maybe all of them. That's his main strength. He's the Swiss Army knife of supports. For low elo picks, that's gold and below, we recommend Blitzcrank, Bard, and Pyke. For bans, we recommend Nautilus, Leona, Blitzcrank, and Yuumi. We added Yuumi because, as you well know, she can be extremely obnoxious to play against when she's paired with a hyperscaling late game carry like Kassadin or Graves. Alright, now for the reason you all really clicked on this video, the skins. We're seeing the release of a new Coven skin line, including Coven LeBlanc for 1350 RP, and Coven Zyra also at 1350 RP, but also including a special Prestige Edition. Most exciting though is the new legendary skin Coven Morgana at 1820 RP with all new voiceovers and custom animations. My favorite out of the three has to be Coven Morgana. The animations are super clean, and she even turns into a bird when she recalls. But what's your favorite? We'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. Alright, we here at skillcapped put a ton of work into our new tier list, and the best way for you to show your love and support is to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video. Remember, the content you find on our YouTube channel is just a taste of the hyper improvement platform you'll find on our website. If you're serious about improving and want to rank up, there's no better time than now to go to skillcapped.com, link in the description below. And as always, good luck and have fun on Summoner's Rift.